Okay, our first pattern is for the intro. And for the intro, we have two chords, B flat and A. And let's look at B flat first. Looking at B flat, you would see a symbol on top of it. It looks like a staple wire. It's actually a symbol for downstroke. It's for the right hand, so it's a right hand technique. So that symbol is a downstroke. So if the chord is B flat, how are you gonna play it or strum the strings is with the motion of going down, this one. So again, since B flat is played with the 6th string dead, right? So you strum from the 5th string down. So that's what the pattern shows you. Tells you what to do. A single downstroke for B flat. And how long are you gonna ring that single downstroke? Well, we have learned from the playing time lesson that the B flat for the intro is played for one measure, right? Or 4 beats. So that means that downstroke you're gonna hold it for 4 beats. So if our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, then it should ring for the whole thing. So it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and on the next measure, that would be for the next chord already, right? And if you play B flat that way, a single downstroke for the full measure with a downstroke right at beat number 1, that's actually what we call whole note rhythm, because the sound rings for 4 beats or for the entire measure. So B flat is played a whole note rhythm: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? But actually, if you look at the intro, the next chord is A, and that's for the next measure. So after playing B flat for 4 beats, where we count 1, 2, 3, 4, on the next one, that would be for the A already. But let's take a look at the A. You would see a downstroke symbol, right? And that's at beat number 1. So similarly, you're gonna play A and do a downstroke starting at beat number 1, right? But how long are you gonna hold it or keep it ringing? Well, if you look at the pattern again and the intro, it shows you the word in parentheses, break. Now what I mean there, you strum A at beat number 1, you keep it ringing, but when you get to beat number 3, that's when you stop it from ringing and you hold it for the rest of the measure. So it's gonna be something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, there, right? And then on the next measure, that would be for the first line of the verse already. So if I'm gonna play just the intro, it would sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then adik sa'yo, right? So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, adik sa'yo, right? Okay, so that's the pattern for the intro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now with chords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There. Pattern number 2. This is the pattern for most part of the song, for the verses and the chorus part. And this is the pattern that's the hardest of all the patterns I'm suggesting, the most complicated. If you look at the pattern, which is, if you look at the data or the information inside that uh, rectangular box or the input box or the text box, you'd see numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are actually the beats. But in between those numbers, you'd see N. What I mean there, for this pattern, the counting would be 8-note counting. So instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, for 8 note counting, it's gonna be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And the reason for that is because this pattern is a mix of quarter notes and 8 notes and with some triplets. It may be too technical, but we're gonna discuss it later in a nice way so you'd be able to understand it. So let's just study the pattern. You would see symbols for downstroke, right? That's the symbol that looks like a staple wire. And then you also see another symbol. It looks like V, right? But that's actually the symbol for upstroke. So if downstroke is for the right hand doing a downward direction, a strum downward, upstroke is the opposite, strum upward. So downstroke and this is upstroke. Now you see a downstroke right at beat number 1. And then the next downstroke would be at beat number 2. And then the next downstroke would be on the end between 2 and 3, or on the end after 2. And then at beat number 3, that's where you have the upstroke. And then on the end between 3 and 4, another upstroke. And then at beat number 4, you have a triplet on 8 note. And also the same for the end after that 4. So it's gonna be something like this. At 4, at 4, and then on the end after that. So again, from beat number 4, or the whole beat number 4, is gonna be something like this. So that's a triplet on 8 notes. And it may be difficult for you to follow the pattern if you're gonna do 8 note counting, because it really requires practice. But if you're good at listening, for example, that stroke would sound something like this, right? So let's see. I'm gonna play the song. So our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So with the pattern, it's gonna be something like this. There. And with chords, it's gonna be something like this. I'm gonna restart the audio. Right? So that's the pattern over those chords. It may be difficult to do, just let me know, but I would love you to, I want you to try to learn it, this one. So if you can just do it slow first, like, right? So there's a sequence of the strokes. So down, 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 up, 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 down, up, down, up, down, right? So if you are able to follow the sequence of the strokes at that slower tempo, then I would suggest play the whole song at a slow tempo. And make your right hand get comfortable or get used to with the sequence of the pattern. When your right hand can repeatedly follow the pattern or the sequence of the pattern over and over, then you should be able to do the pattern at the faster tempo and eventually at the recorded tempo. So all you have to do is just focus and try to remember the sequence of the strokes. Down, 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 up, 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 down, up, down, up, down. So again, down, 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 up, 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 down, up, down, up, down. So So just keep on doing that. And try to do that for like 4 times or 4 measures. So first measure is, second measure, third measure, fourth measure. So something like that. So good luck. You can do it. It's just practice. Pattern number 3. This pattern is for the sequence of chords B flat and A, but not for the intro. Although the intro has the same sequence of chords, but this pattern number 3 is for that sequence of B flat and A, which you can find in all verses and in the narration part. The song has 2 verses. You will find this sequence of B flat A on each of the verses, and also on the narration part there is a sequence of B flat and A. That 2 chords is within a measure. You have the B flat played at beat number 1 and A at beat number 3. So if you look at the pattern, you'd see one downstroke for B flat and another downstroke for A. And then you'd see the counters 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that tells you that B flat and A are within a measure. They are played in a measure. So that measure has 2 chords, which are B flat and A. You strum B flat with a downstroke when you count 1, but when you get to beat number 3, that's when you do A, also a single downstroke. So if I'm gonna play it, and if our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, it's gonna be something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's much simpler. Pattern number 4. Pattern number 4 is only used once, and it's for the D major chord, which is played for 2 measures. If you look at the chorus, on the last line of the chorus, there's this hinahanap-hanap kita. That line, it has 2 chords, A minor, and then the next chord, D, played for 2 measures with a single downstroke. So what I mean there is that D is to be played for 2 measures, but it will be played with a single downstroke only. So it's like 2 whole notes, but the 2 whole notes are connected, or it's just strummed once. So it's gonna be something like this. If our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm gonna do 2 measures of that, and I'll strum once the chord right at the first one. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then on the next part would be the verse, right? So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Pattern number 5 is the pattern for the narration part. If you look at the pattern, it's covers for 1 measure of its coverage. There are 4 strokes. The stroke at count 1 is a downstroke. The next stroke is another downstroke on the end between 2 and 3. And then the third is an upstroke between 3 and 4, or on the end between 3 and 4. And the fourth or last stroke is right at count number 4, or count 4, or beat number 4. So if our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, since the pattern is on an 8-note counting, it's gonna be something like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. If I'm gonna do it at a slower tempo, say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so it's gonna be this way. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But at the recorded tempo, which is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it's gonna be something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So I would say if you're having difficulty following the pattern at the recorded tempo, slow it down. And then just keep practicing over and over. Try to do it for several measures. And then definitely your right hand will get used to the pattern. You'll be able to do it comfortably. And that will lead you to be able to follow the pattern at the recorded tempo. Pattern number 6 is use once also. It's for A minor. This is played for 2 measures. It is the last line. It is on the last line of the narration part, where you have this line, ang puso mong biglang lumisa. Okay? If you look at pattern, this time this pattern is good for 2 measures. If you look at the pattern carefully, you would see that twice you have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a 2 measure pattern, and for that pattern you only have 4 downstrokes. The first downstroke is at count 1 of the first measure, and then the next downstroke or the second downstroke is at the end between 3 and 4. The third downstroke is at the end between 4 and 1, and the fourth downstroke is on the next measure at beat number 1 of the next measure. So if the pattern, if we're gonna do it at a slower tempo, say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then that rhythmic pattern would sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and again 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so with chord, and this pattern is only for A minor. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And at the recorded tempo, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, it would be like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, right? Pattern number 7 is actually used 3 times only, and it's on the last part of the song, where you have 2 chords, B flat and A. So this pattern is a 1 measure pattern but with 2 chords. But that means B flat and A are in a split measure, but the pattern is a complex one, a complicated, not an easy pattern to do. Because at beat number 1 for B flat you have a downstroke, and then at beat number 2 you have an upstroke immediately followed by a downstroke just before you get to the end between beat 2 and 3. So it sounds like this: 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and then when we get to beat number 3 you have the A chord with the downstroke at beat number 3, and then at beat number 4 you have this, right? So it's like the pattern, you can analyze the pattern this way. It's like for that measure you only have this sound, and then you repeat it again. So for 1 measure you would have 2 of that. So for 1 measure it's gonna sound like this. So if I'm gonna count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right? With chords 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and at the recorded tempo 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So that's how it sounds. Pattern number 8 is actually a whole note rhythm for G major chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But let's discuss the last line of the song. The very last line where you have 3 chords. A minor, D, and then G. The rhythmic pattern for A minor and D are the same. That is pattern number 2, which is this one. But when you get to D major chord, you'll slow it down. So from A minor, it would be like. Then when you get to D, you slow it down, and then G. For G, although it's a whole note rhythm, but usually the standard or the style when you strum a chord and if it's the last chord of the song, you just let it ring. In music, that's what we call fermata. So for G, it's going to be like this. Just hold the strings from ringing. Let it ring as long as they can. So if I'm gonna play the last line, it's gonna be sound like this. It's gonna be sound something like this. Let me play the audio so you can listen that part. That's D. Right? So if I'm gonna play along with the song, it's gonna sound like this. The last line. Hi, we just reached the end of the tutorial, or the conclusion of the tutorial. I hope that you have learned something and enjoyed this tutorial, this session with me. If you like this video, this tutorial, please click the like button and please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.